So today we're going to discuss the four main ways of cultivating skillful emotions in early Buddhism, known as the four Brahmavihāras, coming right up. So I'm Doug Smith. I'm study director at the Secular Buddhist Association. That's secularbuddhism.org. If you're new to the channel and interested in living a wiser and a kinder and a calmer life, consider subscribing. So this is going to be an introduction to the four Brahmavihāras. They're known as the Brahmavihāras. That means the abodes of Brahma. Vihara means an abode or a home. And basically, what that means is these are sort of the abodes of the gods, the places that the gods reside. The idea goes back probably well before the Buddha's lifetime, probably comes out of a Brahmanic kind of background, of a notion of gods residing in certain kinds of very kind and loving states of mind, that they would have resided in that way in the heavens. It's an idea that certainly does predate the Buddha, because there is at least one text that we have in the early tradition where Buddhist monastics are out discussing issues of the Dharma with other non-Buddhist teachers, renunciants who are off in the forest, and they come into a discussion, and it turns out that both of them practice what we're going to discuss today, the Brahmavihāras, in the same way. And this kind of a text establishes pretty well that the Brahmavihāras were something that were practiced generally in India at the time, and probably went back quite a ways before as well. It's not described as some sort of newfangled practice, but it's a practice that I think we can expect is quite old. And there are four of these Brahmavihāras, which I'll go through one by one. The first one is known as lovingkindness, or the Pali word is metta. You may have heard the word metta. And this is a practice of trying to generate within ourselves a mental emotion of kindness. And in the early tradition, the Buddha said that this was a good protection against danger, against certain kinds of harm, and as a result, also protection against fear. I did a video about this a while ago that I'll put a link to up here on the screen if you're interested in hearing the ways that loving kindness is supposed to counteract fear and harm. But basically, the idea is that by becoming kinder ourselves, we tend to help others around us to become kinder in turn. So we're not approaching the world with an antagonistic mindset, which makes the world less harmful to us in a very basic way. Coming at the world in a more antagonistic mindset tends to actually make things more potentially dangerous, because other people are liable to react badly, or other animals are more liable to react badly. Loving kindness is also said, interestingly, to be more beneficial even than giving gifts, than being generous in that sense of giving gifts to other people. And here, the reason behind this probably is one of intention. That is, within the Buddha's mindset, within the Buddha's understanding, your intention is paramount. It's not the deeds that you do, but the intention behind those deeds that makes the difference. And as a result, the practice of generating beneficial mindset in our own minds is therefore more beneficial than simply doing certain things. So, for example, we can give gifts with lots of different kinds of frames of mind. We can, of course, give a gift with kindness or compassion. But we can also give a gift under a feeling of obligation or annoyance. We can give a gift without thinking, just as a sort of an automatic kind of reaction, because it's something that has to be done. While the Buddha says that giving gifts is beneficial in any of these cases, it certainly is much less beneficial if we're not doing it with the right mindset. So if we understand giving in that sense, then we'll see that loving kindness is sort of a broader umbrella that captures within itself the giving of gifts in its highest sort of sense, without, in a way that's greater than giving gifts in other ways. And metta is also said to be a way of reaching to jhana, or these states of absorptive meditation. In fact, all of these Brahmavihāras are ways that we can get towards absorptive meditation. Jhana or absorptive meditation is a practice that we can do if we're willing to meditate for long periods of time. It's not the sort of thing you can do quickly or easily, but if you're willing to put many hours into meditation over periods of time, you can get to a stage where the mind does tend to absorb into its meditation object. In this case, it would be, let's say the object would be that very emotion of kindness, of loving kindness. And as we spend time with that, the mind can become absorbed into that object of kindness, and we can reach a stage where there is a feeling of real joy, or of effervescent sort of joy that just sort of arises naturally in the body. And that is the beginning of jhanic meditation. And this is considered by the Buddha to be a very pure way of feeling pleasant sensations. It's a certain pleasant sensation that's not a bodily sensation. It's a sensation of the mind that we can get to on our own. Finally, metta is said to be a way of getting rid of anger and resentment. Basically, what we want to do in right effort, if we can recall right effort, the effort that we make in daily life and in meditation, what we want to do is to basically generate positive mental states and try to denourish mental states that are not useful to us. And part of generating positive mental states is to do this kind of metta or loving kindness meditation. That both helps to put us in a more positive frame of mind, and it also counteracts the negative ones. It counteracts any anger, hatred, ill will that may be in the mind, or if we're continually practicing it, it makes it less likely that states of anger, ill will, hatred will arise. So the practice of metta meditation also is a good counter to ill will, hatred, and anger. Now there are three more states of the Brahmavihāras. The second one, I'll go through them in a little bit less detail because in many ways they share components with loving kindness. The second one is known as compassion or karuṇā. Compassion in the sense of feeling beneficially towards people who are in need or towards people who are suffering, wishing for them to overcome their suffering, wishing for them to get better, wishing for them to be in a better place. It's not, at least originally, it was not a practice of empathy. That is, it's not a practice of sharing the same mental state with those in suffering, because that's a really painful way of approaching it. But rather, it's a joyful way of wishing them the best. And of course, it can be, as such, it can be a spur towards aiding those who are in need. And indeed, it should be, if we're practicing compassion correctly, it should be also a spur to actually help as much as we can in our daily lives those who are in need and who we can help. The third Brahmavihara is known as muditā, or sympathetic joy. And in this case, this is in certain ways the flip side of compassion. If we think of compassion as thinking kindly on those that are suffering or in need, then muditā is, or sympathetic joy, is thinking kindly on those who are themselves in a good place, thinking kindly of those who have done well, who are happy, who are successful. And again, here it's an important practice for us to be happy for those who are happy, for us not to be in a place of resentment or jealousy towards those who are happy, because of course that's not beneficial for us either. It's beneficial for us to realize that it's good for people to be happy, that it's good for people to be in good places, because we all rise together. And if nobody else is happy, then that makes the world, of course, a much worse place. So we should learn to have a mind of goodwill towards those who are also in good places, even though they don't need our help. They don't need necessarily our help to the same degree as those in need. And nevertheless, we can certainly extend to them all of our good wishes and good hopes. And finally, the fourth Brahmavihara is upekkhā, or equanimity. And equanimity is sort of like the capstone on all of these four, because it's a way of sitting, again, with equanimity, without being perturbed by the ups and downs of life, by the fact that there are some people who are suffering and other people who are well off. Now, this is not to say that we are going to reject the notion of justice, of social justice. Far from it. But what it means is that we are going to approach questions of justice, of interaction in the world, with an equanimous mind, with a feeling of reason and rationality, if you like. That's a sort of a Western way of putting it, but as opposed to coming at it with a mind of, let's say, hatred or ill will or anger, we're coming at it with a mind, let's say, more fully possessed by kindness, by wanting to help, and by not being swayed by the worldly winds of success and failure. Because to be swayed by those worldly winds is really to be, in the first place, to be burned out very quickly, to be taken on a ride, to have our emotions really played with, because it's not all the time that our efforts in the world are successful. Far from it. Oftentimes our efforts in the world don't meet with success. And when our efforts are successful, if we grasp onto those too much, then we're setting ourselves up for disappointment in the future and for a feeling of let's say, downness, depression in the future, if and when those apparent successes may turn on us, which they often do. So in order to come at the first three Brahmavihāras in the right mindset, we really do need equanimity, a notion of equanimity with ourselves and the world, so that we come at these beneficial mindsets, I think, with a real purity of mind, rather than with the kind of mind that is more liable to be upset by things that go wrong. And in the early tradition, it was said that we were supposed to generate these four states of mind, one after the other, in other words, not all at the same time, but one by one, and consider ourselves broadcasting these states of mind out to the world. That is, we generate the state within ourselves and extend it limitlessly in every direction. And the simile is given as doing it like a conch blower, or a horn player would blow the trumpet in each direction. And in the same way that the sound of the trumpet will extend theoretically forever in a particular direction, we consider ourselves doing it that way. That we're broadcasting it this direction and that direction and that direction, all the directions around us, so that we're sort of filling the world with each of these emotional states. And this is done not with a sort of a magical feeling that we can change the world that way, but really with a more fundamental idea that we are changing ourselves that way. We're changing our own minds that way. Because insofar as our minds extend outwards towards encompassing the world in our thoughts, what we're trying to do is permeate the mind with a perfume of each of these kind of positive mental states, so that we're not leaving anything out, so that we're not extending them only partially towards certain parts of the world or certain people and not towards others. These are some of the most basic and, I think, important teachings in the early Buddhist tradition, particularly for nowadays, when we live in a global culture of constant disagreements and conflicts, either physical conflicts or emotional conflicts with other people, in a densely populated, difficult world nowadays. We need these kinds of practices. They're absolutely, I think, fundamental, even potentially to the survival of humanity and to survival of the world. So there are things to keep in mind. As a result, what I'm going to try to do is, in the next few weeks, give more detailed lectures on each of the four, sort of try to get into more specifics on what they say and how to practice them. But I think it's important also to keep in mind the general picture of all four of them, the way that they interrelate, the reason that they're all given together as the Brahmavihāras, these abodes of the gods, or of the godlike mind, that sort of heavenly mind, if you like. So I'd be interested in any comments or questions you have, Those are always useful, I think, not only to me, but to everybody else, because if you have a question, you can pretty much guarantee that there are other people with the same question. So thanks so much. Thanks to all my patrons over on Patreon. Thanks to all the subscribers. It's great to have you all, and all the viewers, all you guys, spending your time here trying to make yourselves better, wiser, kinder, less stressed out, more calm. So thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one of these videos. And meanwhile, all of you do be well.